Welcome to CED Office Hour Live. Welcome to the May 30th edition of CED Office Hour Live, where the Community and Economic Development Team, commonly known as CED, the CED team, here at Central State University in the Extension Department, we use this platform to talk about all things CED, to educate people on different aspects of CED, to connect people to resources, to connect agencies to people, and to connect agencies with agencies. And so we always like to get started with what is a baseline definition of community economic development. Even though it's 3 words, it's a short phrase, but it brings a lot of power like diversity, right? But like diversity, you can ask 10 different people the same question and get 10 different answers on the definition. So we like to just establish a baseline on our framework around community and economic development that's along with the best practices in that space. So community and economic development looks at how we live, work, play, and how we navigate through all those spaces. And it's a spectrum, right? So on one end of the spectrum is the economic development side. That's the physical planning, that's the building of highways, bike paths, developments of parks, office buildings, community spaces, all of that, right? Highways and bridges, as we're getting ready to get into this big bridge project here in the Cincinnati area. Um, and then the other end of the spectrum is the people development. So that's helping people move towards self sufficiency, empowering them with knowledge, professional development, personal development. I could say barrier busting, all those kind of things, right? And then in the center, the connector between the bookends of that CED spectrum is us. It's the organizations, the entity, the government, businesses that kind of connect all that and make the world go around, right? And so that is the whole CED spectrum. So as CED professionals, we look at our bandwidth, we look at our experience, we look at our subject matter expertise areas, and say within that, we look at the whole system like systems engineer and say, where can we lend our talents to make the system better, to help people reach their goals? And so we work by working with people. So a lot of times, if we're doing some kind of training, I will say we're the marriage you want to be in, right? Because we're a partner, we're contributing, we're not here to take over, we're here to work ourselves out of a job. So once you reach your goal, right, you don't need us because we've given you the tools to sustain and maintain and grow it beyond our teachings or our support. But what we do want to be is your go to person. So when you get your new idea, initiative, or whatever it may be, and saying, hey, Amber, hey, Eric, I got this new idea. What you think? And then we start that process all over. So we never leave you, but our roles may change. Sometimes we're a facilitator, sometimes we're a coach, and sometimes we're just that listening ear, right? Whatever it may be. And so we just love empowering people, empowering agencies and communities. So this is our platform to do that. Um, what I would like to say is, Eric, would you like to introduce yourself briefly? He's one of the CED team members that are with us today.
Yeah, happy to, Amber, and happy to be here, and really want to learn from this conversation. Thanks so much for being with us. And so my name is Eric Smith. I'm a Program Extension Associate for Central State University Extension, serving Northwest Ohio primarily from my base in Findlay, Ohio, but here to provide assistance for small scale farmers, small businesses, entrepreneurs, and folks looking for that next career or whatever it is. We're here to support. Thanks.
And then I'm Amber Twitty, And I'm based in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I serve the southern region, Ohio, so basically Hamilton and Butler County, going eastward to the greater Portsmouth area. So I have the western border to the eastern border of Ohio. And what we are in today is last month was Second Chance Month, which is Reentry Month, right? Looking at opportunities for restored citizens. And reentry is one of the spaces that we plug and play in. And so wanted to just highlight because it's like, wow, I know some awesome women who are boss ladies. They're doing awesome things and been doing it, and wanted to highlight where what they do from their perspectives, how they made change because they're change agents, and they have positive impact not only on the individuals that they see directly, but on the community as a whole. And so it started out a couple weeks of I got a couple people, but then I started thinking like I know some more people. So this has become, from a short 1 or 2 segment series to a 2 month series. And they keep thinking of more stuff. It's like, oh yeah, I know so and so, and they're doing this and they're doing that. We need to let the community know all these awesome things and resources that are available. And part of that was an opportunity to invite some judges to demystify what the different courts are, what are their roles, but also some of the special programming that they're doing instead of just sending people to prison, right? What are they doing to help people become self empowered and change their trajectory? So today we have the Honorable Miss Janaea Trotter Bratton, who is a mover and shaker here in Hamilton County Court System. And I'm going to turn it over to you because you do so many good things, and I'm not going to steal your thunder. But to start the conversation off, tell us about your journey and how you even got to this position, because you were doing awesome things even before you got behind on the bench. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Uh, Hello, everyone, and thank you, Amber and Eric, for having me today. So, got here. I went to the Ohio State University, um, and for undergrad, and then I went to Chase and KU for law school, and then after law school, well, I guess let me go back. So, when I was in law school, I had a mentor who was Kenneth Parker, and who is actually now the U.S. Attorney for the Southern
Yes.
District of Ohio. And I interned in that office. And so Ken asked me, why was I there? What did I want to do? And I wanted to be a criminal defense attorney. And what I called myself was like, I want to be the Lady Johnny Cochran. Now, in 2024, I know who he is. Most people, like when I talk to younger people, they don't. So the fact that you all are smiling makes me feel really good. And so, I asked him, or he asked me why I was there because I wanted to do defense work. Like, why are you at the prosecutor's office? And I'm like, well, I need to know how you all think if I'm going to beat you, right? And so he told me, he made me realize something different about the justice system. And it was that, and well, I guess he said, who's the most powerful player in the system itself, not necessarily in the courtroom, but in the system itself? Is it the defense attorney, the prosecutor, the judge, right? And I'm like, the judge, of course. And it wasn't, it's the prosecutor, because the
Mhm.
judge only has control of it when it gets in the courtroom. Now, in the courtroom, it's the judge's territory. But before that, prosecutors decide who to charge, what to charge, if they get charged, if something is dismissed. They make those decisions that really impact people's lives, right? And so after having that conversation with Ken and seeing the good that the prosecutor's office can do, um, just by sheer virtue of the power in the office, but also having people of different backgrounds who are prosecuting cases, because the perspective is so important um, even if it's not the prosecutor in the room, but all of us, bounce ideas off of each other. We do it on the bench. Judges bounce ideas off of each other. And if you don't have that diverse perspective, you lose and the people lose out, right? And so, long way of saying, I started in the city prosecutor's office, and I was a prosecutor for about a year and a half. And then I left and went to a small law firm. And then I decided I was not good working for people. And so I opened up my own practice. And in my practice, I did some criminal defense work, um, domestic relations, and civil rights. And I really got into and loved the area of civil rights litigation. And so I ended up closing my practice and joining a law firm, Gerhard Stein and Branch, and practice solely civil rights litigation and all across Ohio. And then once I went straight from Gerhard Stein and Branch to the bench. So that was kind of my journey here on the edge, on the career side. Um, on the community side, because I think that you need both. I've always been very active in the community. And really, what is important to me is being active in portions of our community so that people don't even make it to the court system, and having those early interventions, because we're playing cleanup on the back end, right? And so we want people to not even be in the system at all. And so when I decided to run for judge, I was the chair at the time of the Democratic Party's Judicial Selection Committee. And both parties have a judicial selection committee. And I think both parties' goals are the same. And that is to elect judges who will make positive change in the system. That's all of our goal, regardless of what your background is. And for me, when I was selecting judges who were going to run, there were some things that I wanted to see in these individuals, from, are you going to treat someone like a human being, to what is your philosophy so that they do not continuously cycle through a system. And so I asked myself those same questions. And I decided that I wanted to run for municipal court specifically instead of a different court, because municipal court it's a trial court, but it is also what people call the people's court, because it's everything from a traffic ticket to a vehicular manslaughter, right? And so when it is the court that most of us may have contact with. I've been a defendant because I was speeding, right? And so you never know when you are going to, end up here, or some small matter or car accident, right? It is the court that people have the absolute most contact with. And it is also a court where, I mentioned the vehicular homicide. We do, have domestic violence and assault cases and things like that. But for the most part, that's a small majority of our cases. Most of our cases are everyday problems, people who lack housing and are loitering somewhere. And so they pick up a criminal trespass charge, right? And so I wanted it to be somewhere where I thought that I could really make a change. And I wasn't even in a position to have to put people in prison. Now, people can go to jail from here, but I can't sentence people to prison. And these are all misdemeanor offenses that I handle. So these are not your murders or rapes or very, very serious offenses where you need to separate someone for sure from society, right? And that was the space that I wanted to be in, because you have so much discretion in crafting sentences and in programming and all of those things. So I ran for municipal court in 2019 after one of the judges, who was also my mentor, stepped down, and ran for prosecutor. And then I have been in this seat since 2019. And I now, in about 2021, like the either 21 or 22, I can't remember, when I started the social services program. I started a social services program, which is basically a special docket. It's not Supreme Court certified. It's something that I got a grant for, and started kind of my own docket for people who just appear in front of me. And then in January, I took over our human trafficking court, which is called Change Court. And Change Court, I get cases from all judges. We can take felony cases. It's a Supreme Court certified adult drug / human trafficking court. And so I basically do 3 jobs, but I love my jobs, but it keeps me busy.
So since joining the bench in your current capacity, what are some of the accomplishments or things that you've done just in your core court? Not your special dockets, but just your core court. Because you've done a lot of things, and what has been some of your approaches that you have instituted? Because they weren't happening before, but you've instituted them now. What are you doing, and how has that impacted the community?
Yeah, so one thing, I encourage everyone to get attorneys if they are eligible. People come in, and because they feel like the charges aren't serious, they come in and they're like, I want to plead today. And they don't realize what having a record does. Or when someone comes in and they're like, I didn't do it, but I want to get it over with. No, we're not going to do that today. I'm not taking your plea to get it over with, because you may get it over with today, but you're going to be unemployed tomorrow. And so really having people understand what they're getting themselves into. So that's one. 2, I will say, so my social services program, while I call it a special docket, it really is something that I implemented in my courtroom. So I'm going to put that and separate it from the human trafficking docket.
Okay.
But what I saw when I got here, and the case that made me start the programming, was I saw that a lot of our cases that come in are related to poverty, addiction, mental health, and all of those things that start to get people wrapped up in the system, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to address it, because if you address the underlying problems, and literally it is their underlying problem that brings you there, right? So drug abuse instruments, a criminal trespass. If you get somebody housing, they're not sleeping at the gas station every day and getting on those people's nerves, right? And so I had a woman who she was on her 3rd DUI, which is driving under the influence. And her attorney came and talked to me about, like, why is she picking these charges up back to back? And come to find out, she was, when she was younger, which she wasn't that old now, but a few years back, she was sexually assaulted by her father. And he moved her around to different counties. And so the different counties were filing charges for the sexual assault against her. And her DUIs correlated to the court hearings in the different counties. And so I'm like, does this woman need jail? No, not necessarily, right? Does she need counseling? Does she need addiction services? How are you going to handle these things without putting yourself and the community at risk, right? And so I go in my office because my heart just broke for this young lady. I go in my office, I start calling like therapist office, and I'm out here like, what kind of insurance do you have? And I realized like I can't do that, right? Like for every person, and a lot of people deserve it, and I just didn't have the capacity. And so I'm like, we need a social worker. And if anyone has worked for the government, you hear no a lot because you don't have any money. And so that idea of having a social worker flew by me. And I I actually got a call, which was amazing. Someone heard about like what I wanted to do. And an agency, they had a grant, and they were trying to put social workers or community health workers in non-traditional settings. And so they called, and Judge Cross does the felony version of this. So
Right.
before her reentry court, the I call us the crash test dummies were myself and Judge Cross. And so so we started, they gave us a grant in which funded these community health workers. And so basically, if someone has an identifiable issue that we feel can reasonably be addressed and solved, and that addressing and solving that problem for that person would stop them from coming back into the system, then I put them in my social work program. I have one probation officer who, works with everyone. We have meetings with our community health workers monthly. We go through our dockets, and we really like drill down, come up with a plan for the individuals. If it is education, if it's, dealing with homelessness, how do we get you from couch surfing to permanent housing? How do we get your kids back? How do we get your family unit together? Do you need help dealing with JFS? Those type of things. And so, so we've been doing that for a couple years now. And I would say that's the biggest thing in my courtroom is if I can't fix everything, and everybody here, that comes in my courtroom, I'm not naive that, everyone who comes in has this, super sympathetic problem. Like some people just need to have a timeout for a little bit.
Right.
But being in this court where the offenses are not as serious, I have found that we've had some great success. Then the other thing that I do, I try to be creative. And my new thing, and I didn't do this at first, I don't know when the idea came to me, but now if you're in high school still, my go-to now has been probation, and you can't get off till you give me your diploma. And so I just started this past year, and it has been amazing. And when these kids come in, and I call them kids, they're 18, but I'm still calling them kids. These young people come in, and they have their diploma. And when they first came in my courtroom for fighting or whatever they're in there for, usually the young kids are fighting somewhere, and fighting each other, and come in, and they're fierce, mad, and all of this, and then they come in with their diploma, and they're like, I got it, right? And so really trying to drill down and solve some of those issues, because we know that someone who doesn't graduate from high school is more likely to end up in jail or dead, right? The lifespan itself, just that piece of paper, the lifespan itself is shortened. And so just trying to address what I know our community ills with solutions that I have power over. And so, judges have a lot of power, and you can do good with it. You can come in and do your 8 to 4 and go home. Or you can, come in, do your 8 to 4, but do it with purpose. And that's what I try to do.
Wow. So can you talk a little bit more about your human trafficking court and how that came about And what are the aspects of the program itself? Because that's another term you hear a lot, but people don't fully understand, especially in Ohio, that we're the third state that has the largest amount of human trafficking activity and things going on, and you don't see it, right? And every now and then you hear about it, but it's like, it's a lot more prevalent in the day-to-day with that. And what are you doing around that? And then I think Eric had a comment or question after that.
So the human trafficking docket, I guess, let me go back. So the definition, the legal definition of it, and what we consider human trafficking is broad, right? So there are some aspects of it where people, and it includes human trafficking, the idea that most people, when you first say it, think of. And that is someone coming in, snatching somebody off the street, selling them. And that, like, as you said, that is prevalent in Ohio. But then there are also people who started out in voluntary prostitution and then got to a point where they have no control over themselves. They the person who, and most people know it's like a pimp, right? Will introduce drugs to them, and or they go out because they were on drugs, and then once they kind of have that power over the person, they exert that power through physical demands. If the person does not go out and make a certain amount of money, that they will face being beaten. And so you then have the coercion of threat, right? And where these women, some have been left on the side of the road, beaten up horribly, thrown out of cars and things like that. And so I say that because it's a broad kind of spectrum, and I want to give it some perspective. And so all of these women come in, and they are highly dependent because their whole life has centered around the control of someone else. And so to be in the program, you have to have either a charge or a conviction for solicitation, for prostitution, for or answer the question, have you traded sex for something of value, money, housing, things like that. And that we look as things that are necessary for life, right? Like when you say, shelter, food, those things, that's what we're getting at. Have you traded that for your necessities of life? And so that makes someone eligible. All of the women in our program are addicted. So that's why the Supreme Court has it certified as a drug/human trafficking court. And when the women come in, we get them into residential treatment or some type of stable housing. Here we have an organization that is strictly dedicated to helping survivors of human trafficking, which is called Off the Streets. And so a lot of times they go there or to another facility. And once they are in that facility, we try to get them stable. And we get grants, and we have a grant from the Supreme Court, and we provide everything because most of them are coming out from jail and they literally have the clothes on their backs, nothing. And they can't go back to the pimp's house to get it because we're removing them from that. And so we come in and we take care of all of their basic needs, their basic, we buy clothes down to undergarments, everything, food, all of those things, transportation, bus passes. We get them up to date on medical, dental, all of those things that I think that we take for granted. And then throughout the program, they have counseling. We have a dedicated counselor through an organization, Talbert House, so that they can deal with a lot of the underlying issues, which most of the women have either been sexually assaulted as a child or dealt with some type of abuse as a child. And then just the trauma of being on the street and being trafficked, and address some of those issues. And then you can't graduate until you have permanent housing. So all of our women who graduate come out with permanent housing, and they all have jobs or some legal source of income, and they are dependent on themselves. And it is so just empowering. So I just took it over in January. So I haven't had my own graduation, but there was another judge, Judge Heather Russell, who actually created the court 10 years ago. Will be the 10-year anniversary. This was her baby. She had it for up until last year, but I shadowed her for a year to take the court over. And seeing the graduations and the women who have been alienated from their families and their kids, and now they have custody back, and they've reconnected with their family, and their families are happy to not have a shell, but to have like that actual person back. It's amazing. So I'm very excited about the program and what we can do, but that's that one.
And then Eric, you had a comment or question?
Well, first of all, thank you. This is so insightful, and I do want to get to another question, which is, first I've got a question for you, but then I want to get to the question of, I mean, how do you imagine? I mean, this is so impactful. Like, how could you imagine an educational service, community-based educational service like ours, helping to get more of this happening, right? We're catalyzing. But also, I want to. Amber knows I'm a champion of place-based development. I just would like to understand if you see any connection between, like, are there certain environments or certain neighborhoods or certain communities that, by virtue of just the dynamic, you tend to see more people coming through your system or from particular places than average? And I'm just curious if you see a pattern there or not. I'm an advocate of when you change an environment, you change the outcome for everybody. But maybe I'm not seeing things well.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely see, now, I guess let me say this. So our cases are, there's 14 of us. And so, they all get broken up. So I can tell the concentration of mine. I would say most of the offenses happen in the city of Cincinnati. Most of the offenses have to do with drugs or underlying drugs. I mean, even, your DVs, right? Alcohol related. But as far as areas of town, I would definitely say the inner city. And I would also say places where there are high concentrations of poverty and high concentrations of individuals living very close together. So like housing project type of situations. And I think it's by virtue of contact, right? Like, you have conflict when you have a lot of contact, and when a lot of people are, in one place and you have a concentrated population. But because it's municipal court itself, and a lot of the crimes are driven by poverty and drugs. And so those neighborhoods that have high levels of poverty and concentrations of housing projects, we tend to see more cases from. Now, like your OVIs, we see them all over. That there's no, race, rhyme, or reason to OVIs. And some OVIs are, your first time where you feel perfectly fine and you get in a car and drive and you don't realize. And then, all the way to someone who can't control their, alcohol intake. And so those type of offenses, and even some of like the drug paraphernalias, those type of offenses kind of don't have a concentration. They're all over right now.
And then what was your other statement that was
Oh,
around?
yeah. No, I mean, the work that you're doing, and the special dockets, I mean, like, I don't know if there's a way you can imagine we could support getting the word out. This is an option for communities, and I don't know, how can we help to stimulate
Mhm.
more communities picking this up?
I think the education piece is so important with these specialty dockets, because as I said, when people come in, they're like, I just want to plea. And they don't realize that there are all of these resources out there, and people don't realize it for their families as well. Like, you don't have to be involved in the system to know someone who needs help. And so I think education is important because, even if it's not human trafficking, which is a very specific subset of society, right? But, or, social services program, but, we have a veterans court, which provides so many resources to our, veterans, and connecting them with so many resources for mental health, and a lot have addiction issues. And so, really having the knowledge to know that, if your loved one is in and you go to court with them and you say, this is what the underlying issue is, because if the judge knows the underlying issue and it's something that could possibly be solved, and you do not pose a real danger to the community, and you haven't cycled through the system, every 5 seconds, there's a very good chance that there's something here that you can be connected with. And so there's a mental health docket, there's a veterans docket, there's drug court, and so and we have like a recovery court, which is like a hybrid of drug court, but also people who have done a lot in the system, and this is kind of their last stop before you're getting maxed on days. And all of around Ohio, because I know you're not located down here, these specialty courts are Ohio Supreme Court certified, so they are not exclusive to Hamilton County. And those resources are available. I mean, now the human trafficking courts, I know there's us, Columbus, Franklin County has a human trafficking court. Cuyahoga has a human trafficking court. So I'm not, it's not as, those aren't as popular, but almost all the courts have veterans courts or mental health courts. And so I would say, really just that education piece and being proactive in dealing with, if you have a loved one, friend, whoever in the system.
So what are some of the things that, okay, so you've been on the bench a few years now.
Mm-hmm.
You have been a prosecutor, so you've been on the other side of the bench, right?
Mm-hmm.
You do a lot out in the community. What are some next things that you see moving forward, that you would like to I guess level up the courts to the next set of things? Because see, you don't stay still. It's like, I accomplished this, got this system in place. You're like us, you're systems engineer. Now it's time for process improvement, right? What else can we add? So what are some of the things that you would like to see, not necessarily just in your court, but just the courts in general as well?
So I would like to see social workers incorporated more, because like my social services program is exclusive to my courtroom. And now some of the probation officers have got wind of it. And so the agency who provides the community health workers to my courtroom will also take cases or will also, if the person has insurance, then and not billed under my grant, then they can get, access to those resources. But I would like to see that made wholly available in the system, period, right? And have social workers, because they know the resources. That's their job, right? They are connected to the community, they're connected to resources, and they can connect people very quickly. And I think that's something that's needed. And here, our public defender's office has built out an amazing social work program. And so they, before someone is sentenced, they'll come in with this, nifty social work packet. And it doesn't mean that we're going to accept everything, but there are a lot of placements where they have found the person, a bed in a sober support living housing. They've connected them to, some type of counseling or something. And so, I'm like, okay, let's give it a try, right? Because if you just throw somebody in jail, you think about municipal court, the max that you can get per charge here is 6 months. And the max total that I could sentence somebody is 1.5 years. So regardless, these people are coming back out, and they're coming back out pretty quickly. And so we, have to give resources, and to be able to have in-house someone to provide those resources, I think is so important. And, with addiction and the number of people dying and how fast it's spreading, I really think that we have to be proactive in that sense.
So, Eric, I was thinking about your comment, like, where can we fit in to help, right? And one of the things that I think that we can assist in is with the workforce development programming, right? Because our program is designed to partner with those small businesses that take a lot of the entry level type of positions, or that person might have another specific skill set, but we work with them and say, hey, what are your needs? And then we provide that soft skill training, because they don't have the time. They have to just get the technical stuff, right? But then you have turnover because they don't have the soft skills. And so we partner, that's one of our strategies, is to partner with such businesses who might take on 1 or 2 people, right? That might need a little bit more assistance, and partner with the Office of Reentry. So they're getting that employee assistance kind of program support. But then we're coming in with this soft skill training, whether it's SMART goals, whether it's budgeting, financial literacy kind of things. And we teach it in a more hands-on way, right? It's not cookie cutter. And then we also educate the employers on different incentives so that they don't look at this person as a risky hire. Here you have this incentive, like the Jobs and Family Services on the job training program, where it can reimburse half of your training time for this new employee, up to 3 months, up to $5,000. These are things that are free and open. So we like to connect to resources as well. So I think that's one area that maybe we can meet with her team to see how we can customize that program to meet the needs of her clientele in that space.
Yeah, I think that, that's something that would really help. And it's something that we could, pull in probation, and on the social services docket side, pull in the community health workers, because they're having, I see the person for 5 or 10 minutes and do a quick assessment, but the community health workers are touching base with them weekly. They're giving them rides places. And they're connecting them, as well as probation officers. And so having those additional tools in the toolkit, I think, is important. And I would, love to match up. I think, when we're all operating at, our highest capacity in our lane, that we can find places definitely where we can merge and really help people. So.
Yep. So that's something that immediately came to mind. And then if they're entrepreneur minded, we also had entrepreneurship programs, but through that process, we can kind of gauge, hey, this person might be good for this additional programming. And then we also have a GED program that a lot of people don't know about. It's online, it's free, it's online based, and that is something if they don't have their GED, then we can work with them so they can work towards getting that and being prepared that way as well. So those are two programs that came to mind just from our conversation today.
Awesome.
Your wheels are turning. I know you're going to have a whole new initiative by next week.
Well, I will.
It strikes me too, like this would be really fascinating, I think, if if we did this, right, we have to partner and get some things on our belt.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, with the work you've done, Amber, with amazing speakers and amazing work happening, there should be a fact sheet coming out of this that says this is how extension and these are best practices. Like how extension can help. I think a fact sheet that you could share with other communities.
Yeah.
I think that'd be really great.
So in the agriculture and the extension space is called fact sheets. For you, it would be like a 1-page synopsis of your program and some data, why this is successful. So it's kind of like your walking, talking page. We call those fact sheets, right?
Okay.
And so it's designed to take one particular thing and take a deep dive in 1 page, right? So that they might want to know more information, and then they'll go to a link to a program or they'll be engaged, to say, hey, I didn't know about that. So it's just a way to get that information so we can potentially co-brand something like that. And then you can have all your kind of your resource page for that particular program or idea.
I love it. And I actually have a resource book. So again, another tool in the toolkit. And then even with the GED program, a lot of our women on the human services or human trafficking docket need to get their education. And so we partner, well, not partner, we send them to Don, but everyone's learning style is different. So to have different options, I think is very important. And so I definitely, there are, on the job side, the education side, and just possibly mentors and things like that. I think there is a lot of space where we can work together.
And getting them registered to vote so they know what their options are is another big need, especially, being in election year this year, but you need to know that anyway, because so many times people say, oh no, you have a record or this happened to you, so you can't vote, when in actuality they can't. So that education around that is important as well. So Eric, do you have any other comments or anything?
Well, the other thing that comes to my mind, I mean, me, Amber.
His wheels are turning too, I'm just telling you.
Can't help it. Yeah, but it'd be interesting, right? I think I don't know. I'm an advocate for. I mean, the question is, how do you raise a community, a village that raises its children and people well, right? So how do you grow that? And I think it'd be interesting. And I'd be interested to know about the community health workers, because we got a community health worker program at Central State now. But how do we equip them to be working in those places of particular concentration, like you said, and to start the process of people being involved and engaged in changing their own environment, building the place up, creating a village. Yeah, I'm just thinking about that as well.
Yeah, no,
so resilient communities piece might be a net.
Yes.
The court system could help us to identify this is where to prioritize to start your resiliency program in our community. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it's a myth. I think that it is highly possible when we do interventions. And so, you look at it and you can break a cycle. So if you get mom educated, right, and mom is employed and mom can pull themselves, them and their kids, their family out of poverty, then you have a child that has different opportunities, right? Um, and so, or, even in the places of high concentration and someone living in poverty, you show them different options. And so, you may not see the immediate impact today, right? But you're giving families who will then give communities opportunities. And so, I think that we have to be our short-term goals and then our long-term goals. And I think, the immediate is helping the adult, but what comes from flows from that. I think that is what gives you that community that you were talking about, because we have raised up a population of people who don't have the trauma. They don't have, your people are more likely to enter into the criminal justice system if they have family members who are in the criminal justice system, if they, again, like the high school diploma. And so I think that addressing the immediate needs of the adults will help us with those communities we want.
Awesome. Well, I'm just happy that that you took time out of your busy schedule, because you have 3 sets of dockets, and that's not counting your community stuff and your mentoring and all the other things that you do. Do you have any closing out comments or words of wisdom or anything that you would like to share?
I don't. I just thank you all for having me. It's been a good conversation. You all have given me some things to think about, and I look forward to us, partnering and seeing, how we can really help people. And we are living in a society of people who are hurting, and when I say hurting, you know, I include mental health in it. Um, and we just don't have the systems to help people who are in mental health crises and addiction. And a lot of people are running from mental health issues and finding, solutions there. And so really just being kind and humanizing people, and trying to help them pull themselves out of situations.
Well, thank you, thank you. The words of wisdom. So this will conclude our Women in Reentry, Municipal Court and Human Trafficking with segment with the Honorable Judge Janaea Trotter Bratton. And just thank you again, and I look forward to meeting with you to see how we can formally partner and help move and expand the footprint of those awesome programming that you're doing, and just changing the lives of our community, right? So thank you, and until
Thank
next
you.
week.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.